Welcome to a free EduCom Knowledge Sprint by IISPM. My name is Larry Bernard, and in the next 15 minutes, I will provide an overview of the key points of managing sustainability scope within your projects. In this sprint, we will provide a high-level overview of incorporating sustainability plans into your projects and modifying your project charter to include sustainability. For more in-depth sprints, please register for our 45-minute sprints every Wednesday. Getting into our sprint for today, I'd like to start off with the project charter, incorporating sustainability into your project. There are three key things that I'd like to start off looking at within your project charter. The first is the definition and inclusion of stakeholders. Now, traditionally, when we say stakeholders within project management, we're talking about anyone and everyone that has some type of stake within the project. And may be impacted negatively by the project as well. But when it comes to adding or incorporating sustainability into your project management, one of the things that changes is an expectation to cast a wider net on the stakeholders that we include in the project and or the stakeholders that we give some type of representation within the project. So for example, it's very common to include some type of stakeholder representation for the community that lives physically across the globe, for example, but more specifically maybe just around some of the locations that you have in cities and so forth, communities that are impacted by how you do business. So that would be one. Another one would be someone that represents some key concerns for the environment. So if we have things we're measuring on carbon footprint, waste, water reduction, municipal waste, landfill waste reduction, and so forth and so on, any type of environment, anything that may be part of our environmental management plan within the organization, it's very common today to have a representative from those plans within the project to make sure that there are requirements for those things being fed into the project plans. So that would have to change. Secondly, clearly defining the scope for sustainability. Sustainability has some key challenges. One of those challenges is that when we're developing a product and we're looking at it from a sustainable standpoint, there are many things that we should do. One of those would be to look at the chemical composition, the materials going into the product, and planning out the life cycle of a product from what we call cradle to cradle. And this tends to require the project. So, one of the challenges would be if you're developing a product and our project is starting in March and ending in February of next year, if the product life cycle needs to be planned within the project scope and we're concerned about the environmental impacts of disposal of that product when it's done, for example, then some of those things will have to come into the scope of the project, at least as far as planning, as far as cost assessment, as far as who is going to manage those things at the end of the product life cycle. And in the past, we may not have done that. Number three, incorporation of sustainability into your risk management. So this is another area that requires changing the traditional way that we do things. And to put it quite simply, we need to add variables that we didn't add before. We need to develop a way of measuring things that we didn't have to do before. We need to come up with a new way of reporting metrics and so forth and forecasting. All of the above is very important. So in addition to that, when it comes to the actual plans of the project, there are key variables that have been managed to date in a certain way that will require changing if we're looking at incorporating sustainability scope. So let's go through some of those key variables, and you can use these to make a checklist of what you would want to change in your future projects. So for example, cost-benefit analysis, this is the traditional one. It's very common for every organization to expect some type of cost-benefit analysis, but the most common approach to cost-benefit analysis is to look at to do some simple financial assessments. So what's the expected time for us to get our money back? What's the profit margin that we're going to make on this? what is the net present value in the future, so future value of our money. If we're comparing one project to another, do we have a higher future value of money from one project over another project to help us select one project over another, and so forth and so on. But these variables simply don't work when it comes to accounting for cost for carbon footprint, cost for landfill increase, cost for toxic residue that we may be contaminating some of the soil that is underneath our plant, cost to a community when we leave a community and increase the percentage of people that are unemployed in that community by 25-30%. The impact on certain areas around the world when we purposely go there for lower income labor, but it has a negative impact maybe on our corporate social responsibility plans. All of these things would have to be considered as part of our cost-benefit analysis, and traditionally they have not. So this changes the game for us, right? Another variable would be material composition analysis. This is key. One of the variables that we simply we're changing the way we manage this variable, and that so organizations around the world now want to know, and customers want to know, what is the product made out of? Where did the materials come from? Were they made from recycled materials, virgin materials, toxic materials, materials that are recyclable at the end, materials that are not recyclable and cannot break down and will be an environmental hazard when we're done with them, or not? And as a result, there's costs associated to these things. There's concerns for legal and regulatory compliance, and then just good due diligence to try to change the game on how we manage materials and to become better at reducing our footprint on the planet. This tends to lead to developing something called a sustainability materials filter. And what this is actually is the development of a list of acceptable and unacceptable materials, chemicals, and or products that are used by our organization, our organization's customers, and or our entire supply chain. So what we would do is take and make a list of every chemical and or product and or material that is acceptable to the organization, along with a list of things that are no longer acceptable to the organization, and the demand that we stick to that list, whether it's us, our suppliers, and or anyone else within our supply chain. And this changes the way we do business. Now, an example of this would be Walmart. I know that they've been increasing their demands on what their customers or what their suppliers do as far as meeting a list of requirements as to what can be in certain products and so forth. Another example would be H&M, that they have a list of chemicals that they, toxins that they simply do not allow to be present in any of the dyes that they procure to be used for their clothing. All important. So another variable that we need to consider changing the way that we use this is an environmental impact assessment. Very common to use environmental impact assessments. They've been done for years, but it needs to be, and it has been becoming for many organizations more common to use environmental impact assessments within almost every type of project. So we can take anything and everything that we touch and we do and look at how that impacts the environment in one way, shape, or form. And it changes the requirements for the project, it changes our perspective on the project, and it changes the way we do business. Design philosophy is another thing to consider. So this would be looking at standardized systems, designs, and product designs that have been incorporated into our sustainability plans. Now, believe it or not, whenever you're going to create something new, change a process, procure a new product, there may already be a good way of doing that. So when it comes to business processes, there are new business processes that exist out there in the world that enable sustainable business management. We're proposing changes to project management processes and business processes, and there are other organizations that have ideas on these things as well. When it comes to products, An example here on the screen is of the EcoCradle natural packaging. So these guys provide packaging made out of mycelium that is completely organic and can simply be taken apart and planted in your garden when you're done unwrapping your product. And there are so many examples of products that are eco-friendly and that reduce our footprint and so forth and so on. And so whenever it comes to, buying a new product, designing a new IT system, procuring new hardware, buying new laptops, and on it goes, there may already be some type of design philosophy that's been created out there in the world that we can use. So first steps then, always research whether or not a design philosophy already exists. And if it does, then we can try to make use of that. Now, a good example of that would be Interface, carpet manufacturer, led by and changed by the late Ray Anderson. Interface was one of the largest carpet manufacturers in the world with a strong design philosophy. So let's go through some of the things that they set as goals and have accomplished. Number one at the top of their list there, eliminate waste from their processes. Number two, creating 80% reduction in landfill waste, reducing water intake by 80%, reducing total energy usage by 43%, reducing GHGs by 94%, managing 30% of global energy usage from renewable forms of energy, transitioning European factories to run on 100% renewable electricity, and offsetting 200 million air miles by planting trees. Now, Interface has pretty much led the planet from an industrial perspective on how and what can be done to become more sustainable. And this shopping list here just goes to show you that these are things that can and probably should be taken into consideration as requirements for any project within any organization around the planet. In this sprint, we have provided a high-level overview of incorporating sustainability plans into your projects and modifying your project charter to include sustainability. So don't forget, we run 45-minute sprints every Wednesday. We look forward to seeing you there.